Don Tapscott.
And I'm Alex Tapscott.
And this is What's on Tap Brunch. Actually, it's the last What's on Tap for the year 2021, a year, I guess, that we can happily say goodbye to. Thankfully, the virus is totally gone now, and the world is getting back to normal. What's this? Omicron? Oh, no, not again. Anyway, it'll be okay. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. I see that you've dressed up in some sort of strange outfit. What's that thing hanging around your neck?
Oh, this is called a tie. You may remember when you were a younger man, I showed you how to tie one of these things and put it around your neck. It's for when you go to fancy business affairs. I'm actually off to give a speech. It's a thing called the Real Estate Summit or something. It's for big developers in Canada. A speech in Toronto, get that. And they've got like over 1,000 people. These are senior executives from all the big construction development companies. And it turns out that Trivergence, right? Combination of AI, machine learning, the Internet of Things, smart buildings and roads and so on, and blockchain is completely transforming that industry. So I'm going to share all of that with them today, not just talking about smart buildings, but the really big one is managing a super complicated construction project that has so many moving parts. It's full of contracts. It's full of that could be automated. It's full of paper and errors, and it's all moving in a serial way. We're going to create a shared network state for the construction industry. So that's that one. I'm looking forward to hearing what I have to say.
I'm also looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And you've been doing a lot of talking recently, and I think you've got more planned. Aren't you going to Korea at some point in the next couple of weeks?
Yes, I am. Actually, I just finished this, as many people know, this 8-country tour. And with COVID, it's very different in all these countries. I started off, it was almost 4,000 people in Copenhagen, not a mask in the room. And then everyone stayed up past midnight partying to a band called DAD, which turns out is the AC/DC of Denmark. Man, were they ever loud too. I figured I'm going to get ear damage. And if I ever get ill, it'll be because of that. But it was fine. And then on the other hand, I'm boarding Austrian Airlines a few days later, and I'm told I can't get on the plane because I don't have the right mask. You need a super heavy duty mask to get on that thing. So, and I got out of Austria just in time for, got out of Dodge before they shut the place down. That's a real shutdown. You can't leave your house. So it's we joke about this, but we shouldn't. It's very uneven. And boy, there's a long way to go to work through this. I'll tell you one thing it says to me is this idea of interdependence, that no country can succeed in a world that's failing. And we have to think and act more globally when we're trying to figure out how to solve these problems. Climate change is not a problem of a country. It's a problem of the world, as is a pandemic and as are most problems these days. And yeah, I'm getting on a plane to Korea, where I'm launching in the city of Nanyangju with the mayor of the city, a big event, thousands of people actually, a lot of them be online, to launch a metaverse for the city. And I'm just learning more about it. I'm going to give an opening talk about what this is all about and how blockchain enables the metaverse, because this thing is based on the metaverse. But the idea is that citizens are going to get all their government services and pay their taxes and so on in this metaverse environment. And over time, they'll fold in retail, work, and also learning into this environment. So go figure, the Koreans have kind of be first up to do this in a real major way. You've been doing some writing about this too, haven't you? Metaverse?
Yeah, I have. Absolutely. It's going to appear in the new report, Digital Asset Revolution, which the Blockchain Research Institute is publishing in collaboration with 9 Point Partners, the firm where I work. I've also been doing some thinking into this and some writing for our weekly newsletter as well. And one of the most interesting areas for me of this whole metaverse is actually in an area that I think a lot of people understand innately, and that's video games. A lot of early examples of virtual worlds and super immersive, online environments actually come from the world of video games. And I've done some writing on this, just sort of thinking about, well, how does this factor into the kind of economy that we might have in the future? And I was reminded of that 1967 film, The Graduate, where the hero Benjamin Braddock is cornered at a cocktail party by a family friend who gives him this career advice, which becomes sort of iconic in the culture. He says, one word: plastics. And at the time that made sense. This was the height of the post-war industrial economy. Plastics, other sort of physical things seem like a pretty safe bet, which incidentally is why our sort of counterculture hero rejects it in the film. These days, the established wisdom might be that you should get into Silicon Valley, go work for Facebook or Google, or that you should, go to Wall Street to seek your fortune. I think that, frankly, that's as out of touch to today's youth as the idea of going into plastics was to your generation in the 1960s. Like, plastics, give me a break. And that's really because, the frontier of growth and the most exciting areas in the economy today are not, in San Francisco or New York or Toronto or any particular place. It's actually online in the metaverse, which is this super immersive shared online world that I think soon is going to be paired with hyper realistic virtual reality, and where blockchain allows us to, own our own digital goods, but also control our own digital identity online. And as more and more people spend time online, a bigger share of wallet spend goes online. This is going to become increasingly important. So what kinds of jobs are going to exist in the metaverse? Well, for one, you could work for a DAO, a distributed autonomous organization that, is doing something interesting in crypto. One other area, though, is this thing called play to earn video games. So this is kind of like the big story of the past few months in the world of crypto. You may remember when I was growing up, you'd come, you may recall when I was younger, you would come into the family room and say, turn off the damn PlayStation and do your homework. Now, I think you were probably more enlightened than most parents. I think you probably saw that video games were part of digital technology that actually was going to be super important, but there was no career in playing video games. Even, no matter how enlightened you may have been as a parent, I don't think anybody realistically saw that as an outcome. But times have changed. And today there are millions of young people who are playing these play-to-earn games and making money doing it. And one of the most interesting examples of this is this thing called Axie Infinity, which is basically, I've tried it. It's not really for me, but it's an adventure-style game where players use their these things called Axies. They're basically like avatars to complete tasks and in the process earn crypto assets, which are super fungible. They're like money, right? So earning money in games is not new. There are lots of assets that people have earned in like World of Warcraft, but that was always contained to the virtual world. They were not like assets you could take with you, and that's what's really different about these new games. And they've really caught on. Like in the last 30 days, over 2.5 million people have played Axie Infinity. And it's really popular, particularly in countries like the Philippines, where, young digital natives are seeing an opportunity to make a lot more money playing video games than doing just about anything else. So much so that the Filipino government is actually wants to tax Axie rewards as income tax. They've actually made a statement about that. That's how popular it is. So I think that this is something I'd love to hear more, and I bet you our audience would, on the back of your trip to Korea, because South Korea is a pioneer in video games, and the people in Korea, I think, play video games more hours in the day than just about anybody else. So if anybody is going to figure out how to make it work, the intersection of the metaverse and play to earn and games, I think it's going to be somewhere like in South Korea, right? So I don't know. I think that it'd be really interesting to hear what folks have to say about that from your trip.
Yeah, for sure. And you've got video games in that whole stream. The other one is you had these actual sort of virtual worlds like Second Life.
Yeah.
I remember giving lectures in Second Life. and wandering around doing all kinds of stuff. It was very innovative. Then it kind of petered off. But I think that this concept of these virtual worlds is getting a second life, if I may. And that's largely because of blockchain, because now in these worlds, you can have assets that are can be protected through NFTs. You can have a secure platform that can't be hacked. You can have a currency that enables all this transactional activity to occur, an actual digital currency. And the theory, and this is what I've heard about the implementation in Korea, is that citizens and players get to own their data. And what a radical idea that would be, because it means that your digital identity in the metaverse corresponds to your real identity, and you get to own it, unlike what exists today. So, there's a real interesting sort of fork in the road here about how all this is going to go. On the one hand, you have Facebook and other large corporations that are going to create the virtual world that we will all live in. On the other hand, you have all these initiatives that are decentralized and where there's a network and where you're going to get to presumably keep your data. And this is this is like a turning point in human history, if you ask me. What will it mean for a corporation to own our data we increasingly participate in a virtual environment or in a metaverse? And we've talked about, well, you can't use data to plan your life. You can't monetize it. They're getting rich, you're not. You can't aggregate the data for social purposes. It means that your privacy is being undermined. But it's actually even more than that, because if we're going to spend more and more time in these virtual worlds, we don't know what the underlying algorithms and rules are if they're created by a corporation and if there's opacity. So let me give you an example. I think I might use this in Korea. See this? That's a pen. It's too bad we don't have a user pool. I'm going to let go of this pen. I'm going to open up my fingers, and we could ask people, what's going to happen to the pen? Is it going to go up, down, sideways, or is it going to spin around in a corkscrew shape if I just open my fingers? Okay, well, most people would vote for it's going to fall, and it did, because in the physical world we understand rules. That one's called gravity, right? But in virtual worlds, there are all these underlying rules and algorithms that are not transparent. So, I noticed way back that I'd post something on Facebook with a URL and I didn't get a lot of likes. Well, is there some kind of algorithm in Facebook that if you're posting something that's going to take you off Facebook, they're not going to promote it as much?
Yeah, well, that's true for sure.
Yeah. So, so this is a really kind of big. It's not just a strategic issue. It's almost a social and a moral issue about how all of this is going to get done. Anyway, exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wonder, on that question of rules, it's not certainly a closed system or, a monopoly platform like Facebook is going to have its own rules, and that may not be totally transparent. What exactly do the rules of the road for the decentralized metaverse? Is something that everyone needs to agree upon? Do you change rules when you jump from, environment to environment? There's so much that is left to be understood, or not even understood, like to be developed, really, because this is all like pretty early stage and pretty experimental. We're talking about the metaverse, but if you look at Mark Zuckerberg's demonstrations of VR, it's pretty crappy. I'm not going to lie. Like, I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time in that environment. So I think we've got a ways to go on the physical hardware component. I think probably the mechanics of like the blockchain metaverse, that, we've got a medium for value where we can own digital goods, take them with us. We can, interact between environments. We can jump from place to place. That's actually fairly well developed. It's still early, but that's like clearly there. There's a there. Whereas, the actual, like, will I actually want to put on a headset and spend time online? I think is probably the bigger implementation challenge at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing. Like, to what extent should the citizens of a metaverse participate democratically in its creation and in the creation of the rules. So why wouldn't you have the equivalence of a governance token, which, by the way, you explained well, thank you, in this new paper. I'm going to put a picture of it in a second because it's going out tomorrow or today, will be made public. But, where all these little, where basically you have a token that enables you to vote or to influence the creation of certain things and figure out how resources are allocated and what the rules are and how money is spent and so on.
Well, a great example of that is, like a lot of play to earn games are DAOs. DAOs have governance tokens, like Axie Infinity, the thing I was talking about, has the in-game Axie, which is like the avatar, but it also separately has a governance token. And so, that's the thing that people are earning in the game. And that's the thing that gives them sort of say over the outcome of how the environment functions. Now, that sounds awfully, wonderful and utopian, but the reality is that DAOs suffer from many of the same governance challenges as lots of other organizations. There's a lot of voter apathy. There's information asymmetries where, people on the inside know a lot more about those on the outside. There's collusion, groups that, control large amounts of the system working together, blah, blah, blah. So like all the things that it's sort of interesting to watch crypto native people discover or rediscover many sort of problems that have been endemic in human systems for like millenniums, right? So this is not a new thing, the idea that there's voter apathy or that, there's collusion or that people with vested interests, work together to, control the outcome of things. Like this is like the way the world works, but, it's just sort of interesting.
Well, it is. And one of the countries I did was Austria. I was speaking in Vienna at the Drucker Forum. And Peter Drucker created this whole concept of management of a modern corporation, but it assumed a lot of things. It assumed a centralized model of the firm. Power was at the top, where there's a hierarchy where things are vertically integrated, where you had all these, systems and processes and so on. And this has developed up over a century. It's called modern management and governance. And as we move towards these decentralized models, we're really going to have to reinvent management as it's known. So, you don't have to deal with the issue of governance apathy, in a traditional corporation because the people at the top make the decisions. And there are all kinds of problems, moral hazard and all the rest that exist. Why we have a second here? Why don't we just take apathy? I know that you've done some work on prediction markets as a way of, engaging people in the governance of a decentralized model.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, that's something that, it's something that there's a project called the SX Network, and the co-host of another show that I co-host called DeFi Decoded is the developer of that. And, prediction markets today are used mostly for basically wagering on the outcome of future events, right? You make a prediction that, a certain sporting event is going to go a certain way, or a political event, or, a financial asset is going to go up or down, like that kind of stuff. But there's really interesting potential for prediction markets to play a role in governance by basically providing for like an economic incentive to participate. And an economic penalty for not participating, which would be the other thing, right? So, I think it's something that it's too well. Okay, so the way that it would work in practice basically is that you would have a vote for something, but you'd also like place a wager on it, or you would be incentivized, by voting. If you voted for it, you might get a distribution of a governance token or something. Basically, just creating like an economic reason to participate in any given election, which would increase the overall health of the system, presumably. So we'll see how that works in practice. It's a very clever idea, but again, lots of people come up with clever ideas, but you need individuals to actually endorse and use it, right? So it's something that today is still early stage, but very promising nonetheless.
Well, and the whole idea of finding economic incentives to engage people in creating value and governing things and so on is really important. Like climate change, obviously, is a big one, where we're tokenizing carbon credits, create a much more liquid market for that, but also where, manufacturers can make their products carbon neutral and then bundle in these supercharged tokens that represent a credit to provide economic incentives for people to do the thing that's green. On this speaking tour, I met a company. It's actually based in Vienna called Global Rock Stars, where they're tokenizing a song. And on that platform, as a performer, as a creator of a song or an artist, you put the song up there, and you get most of the royalties, unlike with traditional labels. But also, the lovers of music can invest in your song. They can essentially buy a token that represents an interest in that song, and that token can be used to promote the song. And if the song goes to the moon, you as a music listener's a one-way thing, right? I'm a passive listener. All of a sudden, you're an active investor in the song. And one of the first ones they did had a 700% return for people who invested in that song. So this is kind of going back to Wicconomics, really. It's moving away from this world where, somebody in power has information and knowledge and they push it out to passive recipients. I'm a teacher. I push out information to passive students. I'm a physician. I have knowledge you don't. I'm going to push out a diagnosis to you, and please don't get involved in collaborating with others on your own healthcare, because the internet's full of garbage. I create products, I create services, I push them out to others. I'm a politician. You vote, I rule. I push out stuff to you. Well, the promise here maybe is finally this sort of age of engagement where people can get involved. They can co-create value. And for sure, there's a dark side to all of this, but there's a pretty exciting upside as well.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. Like, I keep finding similarities not similarities, like ways in which blockchain addresses many things that you've been writing about for a long time, that maybe, ideas whose time have finally come because there's this technology that enables it. Like a DAO it's so interesting. Like, you think about the concepts of Wicconomics, of mass collaboration, creating, resources, global resources of significance, and how DAOs could be a solution to scale that in many different ways, as a way to create shared resources where everybody can have a participatory stake in that, right? It's just sort of interesting. Maybe we should unpack that on the next episode.
Sounds great. Speaking of which, I think our time is coming to an end. This is the last episode of What's on Tap for this year. For those of you who are on video, I'm putting up a picture of this report. Alex, I got to say, this is a thing of beauty. It's easily the most profound document that I've read about the transformation of financial services, and it explains DeFi, it explains the web, and it does a wonderful thing. It develops a language and a taxonomy for talking about this stuff, which is always a huge challenge when you have something new.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of mud on the windshield, basically. And if you can start to categorize and explain that these things are actually different, they're part of a whole, and show how they integrate together, that's a huge contribution. At the Blockchain Research Institute, we've decided that we're going to release this report to the public. And it comes out today. And and it's free. It's on blockchainresearchinstitute.org. And you can get a copy of this report called the Digital Asset Revolution. It's a very significant document. Did you want to say anything about the report, Alex?
Only that I think it's something that people who are crypto native and deeply engaged in this space will find really valuable. And I also think people who are new to it will understand as well. And that, to me, is always the objective, which is to reach as big an audience as possible with this. And I would also say that, it's always a work in progress. One of the things we developed for this report was a new taxonomy for digital assets. The taxonomy itself is not new. We've actually been working on that for years and first published a version of it in the second edition of Blockchain Revolution. But as an industry like this matures, new things emerge and come to light. And so we had to take another crack at it. So I think people will really enjoy this. I think especially people working in the financial services industry, investors who are trying to understand how all this stuff works, and everybody who has an interest in what the world is going to look like in the future. So I think that's just about everyone.
So I'm now going to read off a list of 7 digital assets. We'll start with Bitcoin. And I would like you to tell us the price that it's going to go to.
Ha ha ha, very funny.
You may remember this funny incident where we always get asked this over the years. We say, look, we don't do price predictions, investment advice, or any of that stuff. But
that's right.
One time we deviated from that was the book had come out. I think Bitcoin was trading, I don't know, about $500 or something. And CoinDesk said, we want to know what is your view on where Bitcoin will go to. So we said, okay, well, let's just shake things up. We said, in the year 2018, Bitcoin will go to $2,000.
The year 2017, it would go to $2,000.
Yeah, we said that. And
in 2018, it almost went back down to $2,000.
But it went up to 20,000 in 2 months. And so go figure, this is the only space in the world where you make a radical prediction that something's going to go way up and you're totally wrong because it goes up by an order of magnitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it's sure going to be an interesting 2022. Big things going on in the world. And this blockchain revolution continues inexorably. Metaverse, DeFi, digital assets, NFTs, all of these big ideas that luckily or thankfully we kind of were dug into back in 2016 are unfolding. So it's good to, it's an amazing time to be alive. It's going to be lots of conflict over the next year. With traditional institutions and regulatory bodies, either trying to embrace this or fight it. And, the old Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times.
We certainly are.
Yep. When you go, readers, lovers, listeners, viewers of What's on Tap, when you go to blockchainresearchinstitute.org to get the report, you will notice it's a completely new website. We've spent 6 months of rebuilding this thing to make it easily, all the know-how in there easily accessible to large numbers of people. So it is our hope that this will be an important contribution to bringing clarity to the market and helping bridge the gap between the potential of this technology and its actual use. So, Alex, looking forward to the next year.
Yes. Everybody, and safe travels.
Thanks for watching. 26 episodes, and they keep getting bigger every time. So we'll see you next year. Take care.